I think when you and I chatted too, it's like you want something that you can like something contained. You're not interested in reading 50 books right now. Like there's just a time constraints.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. That is
yeah.
true.
So that's why I recommended, and you did read Kingdom Come, which is possibly I don't know how people wouldn't have it on their best of all time list because it's such an incredible like it's like almost like literature because it really isn't about I mean there are superheroes and it is about superheroes, but the essence of the story is more about like coming of age and youth and rebellion and denying your purpose and those kinds of things. It's only a four issue thing. It's a very short graphic novel and that kind of thing. What was your perspective when you went to this?
Well, first off, the reason why I was interested in this, well, two of the reasons was once, like you said, it's something pretty impactful in the comic book space, but also the art style by Alex Ross, which
Mhm,
is something that you suggested, and also Ginger Ninja James. He said that like,
mhm.
yeah, you got to look at this guy's art because like it's just on another level. And so, yeah, as soon as I started reading through this and I was looking at the pages here, I was instantly hooked, yeah, by the art alone. And then when I saw where the story was heading, which was this interesting situation where they mix kind of like modern Christianity with this revelation, and
Mhm.
also like with superheroes and stuff. Like that's actually a really cool idea that they had that they went with. And the final point I would say too that really was intriguing was I was always curious like what would happen if yeah there was too many superheroes in the world, because you have these huge universes, DC and Marvel, and like they have just hundreds and hundreds of superheroes. And I was always curious like, well, there's got to be a point where there's like one too many, how do you contain all of this? And the story does a really good job explaining like what happens when there's generations of them. And then like you said, it's a kind of rebellious and coming of age. They're just going around doing stuff that are terrible, and they've kind of lost their purpose of what being a hero is. And yeah, that concept alone was just really, really intriguing for me.
Yeah, the photorealism that Alex Ross uses is kind of a great gateway for a lot of folks that are really just, especially if you're into art first. This is definitely one of those books that if you have never really picked up Kingdom Come, you should be able to find a trade paperback or a copy very inexpensively, or even a library and that kind of thing. And you can see just Alex Ross's take on all of these characters have sort of kind of become in our comic nerddom very very commonplace. And the book it's sort of a great alternate future story of what could happen, right? That's kind of the premise of the book is like this is the potential future of where we're headed with the superheroes in the sense of their kids and grandkids and those kinds of things are out of control. And it's like will the characters return? Superman's kind of Superman's retired. So it's
Yeah,
like, will he step up to the plate and kind of realize, listen, the world kind of has to have you, man. You got to go. Batman has basically solved crime. Like he has like these cyborgs that police Gotham City and things like that, and he's in like he has all sorts of like mechanical gear and stuff to support his body. Um, but just have a great journey and a great story that's very right compact. Would that be the best way to explain it? Because it's just a lot
yes.
happens in general, just a few pages.
I think what's crazy is how just about every page, or maybe every other page, I'm always seeing a different character, like a different hero or a different villain. And I'm just for somebody that's like not even familiar with a lot of these guys, and I'm sure maybe there's a lot of them that are like only in this story. It was just amazing to see like the variety of different characters. I mean, there's like one scene here where there's a character that looks like a building, like a
Mhm.
cathedral, and I'm like, what is going on here? And then there's like another character. I don't remember the name of the person standing, I think, on like the White House or something. It's like this
Mhm.
patriotic looking guy, and I mean, there's just it's amazing just seeing the cast of people here. And then, yeah, and then you talked about how like that. What I thought was cool was Batman. Yeah, he solved crime in Gotham, and he's got these like robots running around patrolling, kind of like Iron Man. not Ultron, but kind of like Ultron era, right? With
Right.
the
Yep.
drones and stuff, like that style. And yeah, it's just all of this was just pretty cool to see. And yeah, it was really fun to read through this.
Yeah, it's one of these things too. I think when you reread it, it's one of these things you can come back to, and when you reread it, and you can soak up a lot more like the backgrounds and some of the details that they kind of put in. It's really, really an interesting book on a lot of levels. And I think what they also do, I think, really exceedingly well was try to give you some perspective of like where everybody could end up, right? So you have characters that um retire, but also in different ways in different places. Like, it's like Green Lantern is just sort of like not relevant. You know what I mean? He's
Yes,
not that,
yeah,
he's just sort of out there, right? We're not just like, just he's not doing anything for anybody. It's not really even like a negative thing. He's just out there, right? So you have little elements like that versus with someone like Wonder Woman, who's still kind of like at odds with her mission. Like she's at odds with her ideals. And she's the one that will, confront Clark and can talk to him in a different way that other people wouldn't be able to talk to him. And the story that Mark Waid put together, I think, with Alex Ross kind of deserves a lot more writing credit. And this is kind of I think some of the contention between the two, but was a book that holds up well for someone like me who's been reading comic books for so long, and then to be able to have someone like you who doesn't have like a library of references that they're getting, but you can still enjoy a book like this.
yes. I think this does well for somebody like me that has a basic understanding of like people like Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, even Green Lantern, and like just understanding who they are a little bit, and then you could read a book like this or a comic like this and not get kind of lost in the sauce, I guess you can say.
Yeah.
Because it's very well self-contained, and um, even if they introduce all these characters, you're not getting thrown off, I guess. Because a lot of times I've read stuff and it's like all these new characters and you get thrown off by like, well, who's this and who's that? But I mean, what helps too is the visual aspect of it too. Um, the only person I was a little confused on was Captain Marvel, which I'm assuming that is Shazam. But
Correct.
was that like is that like a different name that they had at the time for this character?
Well, great topic. I'm glad we can transition right there. This is a great topic because let me try to minimize some of the so yeah, right. Here's center stage. He refers to him as Shazam, rightfully so. So all right, so here's the story. Captain Marvel actually began in a book that's no longer called Whiz Comics. So the first appearance of Captain Marvel is actually in Whiz, and Captain Marvel was actually bigger than Superman back in the day, right? But through the course of time and World War II and all those kinds of things, and Whiz and the rights get all jumbled mumbled. Once Marvel Comics comes along, and I don't exactly remember all of the details off the top of my head, they bought up the legal rights to the name Captain Marvel out from underneath this and during this transition. So when DC has this book, they now no longer have the rights to call this character Captain Marvel. So now they're
Huh.
stuck.
Oh
So
wow.
that's why, even though he exists back in our DC universe, he kind of goes more by Shazam. He doesn't really go by Captain Marvel in the same way he used to. So that's why you end up with this concept of this character that's called Captain Marvel, but he's really he says Shazam, and that's what he's associated with is that phrase, the magic word that he says. Now, of course, the movie has kind of rebranded all of that, and that's kind of how he's known. But Captain Marvel existed in both places, in both companies. The Captain Marvel, which is the Marvel version, which is MAR-VELL,
Oh, okay.
and that character is this male character that is, oh man, there's been like so many iterations of him, because he passes away in the middle of this whole this famous comic book story from back in the day where it's the Kree and Skrull War, and he dies. So you end up with these different versions of Captain Marvel that come about, which Monica Rambeau actually becomes a more relevant Captain Marvel. And the version in the movie that we got, the Carol Danvers character, she was just known as Miss Marvel. and she looks completely different than what we got. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of what Miss Marvel looked like.
Yes, I
Um,
have. Somebody shared it recently on a live stream, or I think it was on Twitter, and I was like, "Oh wow, yeah, this is very different."
yeah, she's like this. She's always been played up as like this beautiful, hot, super powerful character. She was never this kind of like odd or sort of like, I don't want to say off-putting, but she is kind of off-putting. Um, Version that we've gotten in modern comics because they kind of rebranded her after, I think it was after the Wonder Woman movie, but I don't know the timeline in the comics. So I wasn't actively reading those when they were being published, so I'm not quite sure of the timeline on when that. But I
But
know
it makes
this.
sense though, because I
Yeah.
think I would have. It makes sense because now I see the Carol Danvers MCU version everywhere. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, that version. I remember seeing that style before,
Yeah.
and then like the more like what red and yellow blue suits.
Right.
Um, that probably was when I was a teenager. I remember seeing that in one of the Marvel cartoons. Um, I want to say I remember seeing that, but I know who Captain Marvel was, right? Because wasn't he a what'd you call them? Kree or
Hmm.
Krell? I don't remember
Hmm.
the word you said.
Yeah. Cree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, Kree. Okay, yeah, because I remember seeing that in one of the old cartoons from like the mid 2000s, and Miss Marvel was with him, I think. So that's pretty cool, though. That little history there with DC and Marvel and the same name character.
Yeah, it is a little crazy to know. So this is what Marvel looked like. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah, I've seen that. Okay, that's really cool.
Um so yeah, so what Marvel decided to do with their modern books was they needed to create this strong woman, Wonder Woman type character, and they decided to rebrand Carol Danvers as sort of like this Superman. She's because she's more Superman than she even is Wonder Woman. Like I'm not even sure I totally get what the new Captain Marvel Carol Danvers' weaknesses are. Like it's just I'm very confused because it seems like every time I think I've got it, there's another story that kind of contradicts that. So I'm not totally sure I get what her weaknesses are. And that's kind of we ended up with this new version played by Brie Larson. Um, it will be interesting to see because I did say I thought that there was a chance because of who the producer is and this new James Gunn thing that we might see Shazam survive into the new films or new material, not necessarily films. There is an in credit scene that has Shazam, this is Zachary Levi's character, ending up with the Peacemaker people. So we may see his character survive. He's probably under contract for more
Yeah.
material, so it wouldn't shock me we see more of that kind of stuff. So
Well, going back to the Kingdom Come comic, one other aspect of it that was really cool to see was the main character. I'm just gonna refer to him as a civilian, but I don't remember his
mhm.
name off the top of my
Yeah,
head.
the
But
narrator. Hmm.
yeah, the narrator, like he's kind of like it's weird. Like he's watching it all go down, kind of like um as a ghost, for lack of better words here. But and then like there's one point where they're all inside the Green Lantern's like city, and they're having a meeting, and then like you just see like Flash like staring in the direction of this guy, and then he like pulls him out of like whatever dimension that he was in. And that just made me laugh, but also kind of it creeped me out for a second because I forgot that like Flash can. I mean, well, I guess this version of him, he's like way. It looks like he's way stronger than like the ones that are around now, because he's kind of, at least in the comic, the way he's depicted, he's like kind of always vibrating and like in motion, and he's not really like standing still like a normal human. I don't know if you
Right.
can add to that, but yeah. Anyways, that was a really cool scene to see that happen.
Yeah, so we'll go to Kingdom Come a little bit and just kind of give everybody a little bit of we'll fill in a few of the gaps because you covered a lot of the early plot points. And these are not really spoilers. This is more like think of it as more like compendium to what's actually happening here. So in the opening issue, in issue number one, we're introduced with this character that's in this hospital bed, and they're talking about these nightmares, right? The person that's in the bed is having these dreams about the end of the world, basically Judgment Day, right? And this quick little shot right here in the red, we're gonna get it right here for you, um, because he's in this hospital bed meeting with this pastor, basically this guy with the Bible,
Yep.
and And the guy with this gas mask and this red frame, this is a character called Sandman, and the original Sandman looked like this, and he's like the master of dreams and that kind of thing. So he was the one that was, given these nightmares, and now we're going to transition from him as this character passes away from old age, and it's going to now go to this pastor named Norman. And Norman really just doesn't want to deal with this. Like, it's just too much. Like, it's just so let me jump down here to the bottom where you can see where we get to the ghost thing that you were referring to, because this is the battle scenes of the younger heroes. This is him preaching. Then he kind of gets sucked. Here's the Flash in motion you were talking about, and then we have this guy show up. So this guy is called Spectre, and Spectre is basically going to take Norman along to kind of see everything. He needs a witness, and it's basically nice. And I talk about this with a lot of movies. Sometimes we have to have contrivances or things that we do on purpose, so there's a reason for the audience to be there. There's a reason for the audience to know what's going on. Or in the case of like the X-Men animated cartoon that I talk about, it's why we have Jubilee. Jubilee will ask these really dumb questions, and they're really there for have a reason to explain something to us or to the little kid watching at home, because the show is made for kids. Same thing with Spectre. Now we can take Norman along, and now we're watching all these different events through Norman's eyes. And that's kind of what's happening here. He's like, I need you, Norman McKay. He's like, no, wait. Okay. These visions are talking to me. I've gone mad. He's like, no, not really. I'm the Spectre. So I will say this version of the Spectre and the way he's drawn and handled, way cooler than just about any other version of the Spectre. So just so,
That's cool.
it's really, really cool. But the fact that they were able to come up with an idea like this, like you said earlier, like they were interwoven the book of Revelations and the Gog versus Magog war and all these Christian elements from the book of Revelations into something that's superhero related, I think is why it was one of the reasons the story is still timeless. This is 1996. So it's we're
Yes.
well over 25 years and we're still talking about this book as like a classic. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah. 96. Yeah, that's. I mean, I'm as old as this comic then.
No, you're not. It's definitely older than you. Definitely.
Yeah. Right? And I'm not playing no